So welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I am Frank Lohman, Senior Director of Building Science here at CHBA, and my co-host today is Alex Bowles, Senior Technical Advisor on Codes and Standards. We also have Natasha Rombo with us in the background. Natasha is CHBA's Director of Marketing Communications. We have a 90-minute webinar today with 4 speakers and 2 hosts and lots of new information to share with you. I will introduce our speakers in a second. Today's webinar is the launch of our brand new early adopter webinar series. Today's early adopters will tell us about a new design tool and their experience with integrating resilience into their home designs. But before we dive into that, we have some housekeeping to do. First of all, the recording of today's webinar will be available on the CHBA website to CHBA members, usually within a day, in case you can't stay to the end or you want to listen to a certain portion again. We're also posting the PDF documents of the slide deck right next to the presentation on the same page for CHBA members. I also want to let you know that we have muted all of you participants so that there are no distractions. We are trying to, however, like always in our webinars, to make it as interactive as possible. That means you can ask questions throughout the webinar by writing them in the question and answer panel by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window. We may answer some of those questions live during the webinar or by responding in the Q&A panel. Maybe one request, actually, if you have a question to a specific speaker, please mention that in your question so that we know who the question is for. As in other technical webinars, we will have a few polls for you. So Natasha, let's try the first poll right now. Everyone should see a window pop up. We're asking for your primary region of where you do your business or your organization does the business. Let's see here. Natasha, let us know when we see results.
We'll give another 5 seconds.
Sure. Those of you who have done these polls before, you see that we actually have now all provinces where we had only regions before. Okay, so we have very strong showing from Ontario. That's great. And BC, Alberta is strongly following after that. And let me just scroll. Yes, that's good. So a little bit more Ontario than we would expect proportional representation to be, but that's great. Good to know. So sometimes it helps us to understand where certain topics may be more relevant in other regions. So now I lost my notes. Just a second. Yeah, the last housekeeping item is that, of course, as an experienced Zoom participant, you already know this. You can manage your own screen by sizing the PowerPoint, making it bigger or smaller, using the sliding and dividing bar. Okay, so what we'd like to do is, first of all, explain to you what this whole webinar series is all about. The idea of the early adopter webinar series is to showcase innovative solutions or emerging technologies or technical solutions to upcoming code requirements, or in today's webinar, like a new design tool. So something where we rely on the early adopters and risk takers to figure it all out for others, or at least help the others. The format would be that we have a builder or renovator, or in this case, 3 of them today, provide their real-life commentary after an expert co-presenter has explained the new technology, innovative concept, or in today's case, the design tool, which is Stefanie. The early adopters, or in this case, the early adopter has voluntarily adopted the new technology, practice, or innovative idea and shares what worked, what didn't, by showcasing their projects and their journey. We hope that this concept will help other builders and renovators to get a head start on cost-effectively incorporating best practices into their projects. You see on the screen our 3 first subjects, the resilience design tool today. We will have future webinars on climate resilience that will be deep dives on specific climate hazards like tornado resistance or wildfire protection separately. So we'll definitely get more of this topic. Today's focus is the design tool. Then our next topic is effective sound transmission techniques in residential construction. We will focus on secondary suites and multi-unit construction. This is a topic that we don't often talk about, but it is becoming more important as we're building more dense housing forms. And then we will explore mass timber later in the fall. It's a new material, a new building technique that isn't very common yet in low-rise construction, and we want to give everyone a head start on that. So this gives you an idea of the kinds of topics we would like to see here. The series is open-ended. If a subject emerges and it looks like there's interest, we will put it on our list. If you have ideas or suggestions for a subject, please let us know. We hope that this is really resonates and is equally helpful to all groups and professions in our membership. And so this is where we'd like to run the second poll. Natasha, if you can bring that up, I'd like to know which discipline and profession is represented in today's webinar. And that should hopefully everyone has at least one category that they can choose here. And Natasha, whenever you think that we have a good set of answers, you can show us the results. The panelists cannot see how it develops.
Still got some answers trickling in, so we'll give it a few more seconds.
Yeah, and I see now that we're at almost 140 participants, which is what we expected. Perfect. Okay, that's great. Strong representation from builders, some developers and renovators, even some manufacturers and suppliers. That's great. And government. That's always good to see. So that's a very broad and other. Yes, there's always a limit to what we could guess who else is there. It's a big group today, but that's good to know. And of course, our HBAs are also supporting us. Thanks for that. So before I introduce today's speakers, we have one more question to all of you. It's a bit of an association business, if you want. The question is not related to today's topic, but it is a bit of an urgent request from our CEO for information from our members to inform some of our government relations initiatives here at CHBA National, especially you as a member on today's webinar that are interested in new technical topics and doing things better. So this poll will be in Slido, which is a different software that Alex will run in a second. So we will all be seeing what is being answered. And while I give you a bit of an introduction as to why we're asking, please scan the QR code on the screen with your phone so you can participate. This is the way you provide your answers. And this slide that I'm talking to will be up for a minute or two, so you have some time. The question we want to ask all of the builders and renovators is about productivity of the residential construction industry. We are often presented with productivity statistics that calculate the number of units started with the number of people employed and the value of money invested in the industry. But if you can imagine, these numbers have gone wildly up and down with recent economic and financial developments in the housing market. So naturally, the productivity statistics are more or less useless if they're just based on those numbers. I mean, it looks like we had all figured out in 2021, and then we forgot everything in 2022 if you just go by those productivity numbers. So we're trying to find a better way to express productivity gains and where the industry has made those gains. Plus, during the last 10, 15 years, there have been a lot of new regulatory barriers put against building faster and increasing productivity. And still our industry has increased productivity with many advances. And what we're interested in finding out today is from you, what you think is your productivity gains for on-site construction over the recent years. Could be anything from laser levels to 3D modeling or using drones for estimates. I don't know, even business practices. So the question is, thinking about your own business, what technologies, building practices, or business practices have increased productivity for your company over the past 15 years? So your responses will appear in a word cloud once Alex starts that Slido session, which means you can type a short response and it will appear on screen so others can see it. You can't, unfortunately, just vote up other people's responses, but if you agree that a concept or a word on the screen is an important productivity gain, you can retype the same word to increase the count of this word and therefore its size. And with that, Alex, I think we're ready. Oh, we already have some. And if you could, the Taylor Swift is an inside joke, so that's it's been coming through a couple of other of our meetings. We hope that you don't upvote that, but it's a longer story how that evolved. So it's become a staple in our Slido sessions, I should say. But that's great. Oh wow, I see a lot of good stuff coming here. The blower door test I saw earlier. Digital platforms for business management, good point. Real-time 3D rendering, good. That's probably for the customers as well to make decisions. AI and customer information systems, good. And LED lighting, interesting. Okay. AI, yes, I was wondering about that, if AI has made a difference. Um, Inspection software, that's interesting. Okay. I wonder if that's maybe like, remote inspections, making it easier. Project management software, good. Okay, one of you says nothing really, it's just different. Okay. You see how it evolves if people, type the same thing. Okay. BDT is not, I'm not sure if anyone knows what BDT is. Maybe you can type the full concept. BIM is known to us, building information modeling. Yeah, some of those things we might have to look up. LiDAR as well, probably softwares.
Really great, Frank. And if we do decide to continue moving forward, people can still input their answers as we go. And BDT is blower door test.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Okay, yeah, so that's good to know, Alex. People can continue if you have an idea to use the Slido poll. You'll leave it open in the background. We have one more slide that I used to introduce our speakers, and then we'll switch to Stefanie's presentation and the builder's presentation. So we'll leave the Slido session open in the background. So thank you so much for that valuable input into this question. We're finally getting to today's topic. CHBA is very happy to have Stefanie Coleman, Mark Lindenbach, Kevin Jollow, and Gavin McLeod with us today. Each of them brings a wealth of knowledge with them, and I'd like to thank each of you now, before I forget that, for taking the time of your busy schedules and to be here today. It takes a bit of preparation, and we really appreciate that you're doing this. Today's topic is climate resilience and how to integrate this into home design and construction. And we'll start with a presentation from Stefanie introducing a new sustainable resilient homes design tool that she developed. I say she developed, she will explain to us who developed it. Some of you may know Stefanie from the time when she served as a national CHBA president in 2019, 2020. She now works for the local energy efficiency partnerships team, also called LEEP, at Natural Resources Canada. She oversees LEEP's work on the Greener Neighborhoods pilot program, climate adaptation and resilience in residential construction. Stefanie also has a rich experience in the industry for 20 years through having owned a renovation contracting business, as well as having worked with Building Knowledge Canada and Doug Terry Homes. After Stefanie, we will hear from each of our early adopters. Gavin is a partner at Averra Developments, a Vancouver-based residential construction company he co-founded in 2007. With over 15 years of experience developing and building homes in the Lower Mainland, Gavin has led Averra in its commitment to high-performance, sustainable construction. The company specializes in net zero homes and is a proud member of CHBA's National Net Zero Council. And under Gavin's leadership, Averra has become known for its integrated approach to resilient building, combining forward-thinking design with practical, real-world construction expertise. Mark is the program manager, sustainability and compliance at Avalon Master Builder in Calgary, where he drives transformative strategies to align construction practices with net zero stewardship and sustainability rigor. Mark also serves as the co-chair of CHBA's Net Zero Technical Committee and the Emissions and Resilience Working Group. Mark has a background in fire safety and code compliance, which helps him to get his projects to meet the highest benchmarks for safety, sustainability, and future-ready design. So his work bridges policy, innovation, and on-the-ground execution to create communities that are both sustainable and resilient. And Kevin is a project manager at Farsight Homes in Whitchurch, Stouffville, just north of Markham, Ontario. With 15 years in low-rise residential construction and a background in civil engineering, Kevin brings hands-on experience and a passion for building science to every project. His career began through the Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program in high school, and he's been dedicated to raising standards ever since. So while Stefanie's taking over the screen, Alex will run another poll, or Natasha, that we thought was good for our speakers, the audience, and CHBA to understand in terms of knowing where everybody is on their journey towards integrating more resilience into home design and construction. So these are the questions here. So you have a choice of 1 to 5 as to you haven't started thinking about it, you may start today, or you're already routinely doing it and you're just looking today for some gems of things that you may not have done where you can enrich your experience or the products that you're offering. And so we're waiting until we have, it might be a while before we left 2 and 4 open. So there's a bit of a gray zone because we didn't want to pin everyone to just exactly those responses. So if you're not sure, just pick 2 or 4, we'll ask a similar poll at the end to see if what we offer today in our webinar has made a bit of a difference. And I do notice that we've just gained a few participants as well here. Okay, so we're solidly in the middle. We have started implementing resilience in some projects. That's good. That's the majority. So everyone is sort of semi-informed. That looks to me like not quite the expert group, but a group that will definitely be able to learn from today. And as I said, we'll have a similar question at the end. And with that, I will pass it on to Stefanie.
Thank you so much, Frank. And thank you to Frank and CHBA and Alex and team for inviting us to be a part of this inaugural webinar series. It's very exciting. It's great to see the amount of people that are have some experience in resilience. So that means that they're going to ask some really hard questions, I suspect. So thanks again. And also to the 3 builders that are leading builders in this space that I've had the good pleasure of getting to work with over the last little while. So as Frank mentioned, I'm now with the Local Energy Efficiency Partnership, or LEEP, that sits within Natural Resources Canada. And the way I like to kind of describe what LEEP does is we are a bridge between policy and boots on the ground. And so we hear from the industry about the types of challenges that they're facing or areas in which they need support. And we develop various resources such as workshops, case studies, videos, etc., to help the industry advance as we see things going forward around the building code, around energy, around carbon, and now climate resilience. So what I thought we would do is before, just to set the stage for what we're talking about when we are talking about sustainable resilience, which you'll hear throughout this webinar. So the way we're defining sustainable resilience is a sustainable resilient home has reduced energy demands and carbon emissions, which we're tagging like mitigation strategies, and is resilient against climate-related weather impacts or adaptation strategies. And so if we looked at it through, say, a Venn diagram approach, we've got sustainability, where we're addressing energy and carbon through mitigation strategies, and resilience, where we are addressing extreme weather through adaptation strategies. And together, we are trying to develop the home of the future, the sustainable resilient home. Now, this is important because for many reasons, but one in particular that has really begun to emerge is the finance industry, even within government and also external, like investors, have really begun to pay attention to the impacts of climate change and have identified that climate change has the potential to have a very negative effect on not only financial institutions, but the entire financial system more broadly. And so a lot of attention is starting to be paid on what are our strategies to reduce our energy and carbon impacts, which are causing impacts for climate change, but also what are we doing, in businesses and organizations to address climate-related risks. And so as we see climate warming, which we know because we keep seeing things on the news that show that we're hitting these record warming days, we are also seeing a simultaneous increase in insurable losses. Now, there's many drivers behind this, including the cost of labor and housing and all these other things that do escalate the cost after an extreme event. But we are seeing more frequent, more extreme events as well. And so just to put it into perspective, 2024 is the worst year in Canadian history for insurable losses at $8.5 billion, where you can see the 2 prior years were sort of averaging around $3.5 billion. The worst year prior to this past year was 2016 with the Fort McMurray fires, and that was a little over $6 billion. And about 70% of these losses are related to residential housing. Other things like automotive and other things are part of the whole number, but about 70 or so percent is related to residential housing. So just to paint the picture for you of what happened in 2024 from a high level perspective, Hurricane Debbie, the remnants of that hit Quebec, created extreme catastrophic losses there at $2.5 billion. We had flooding in Toronto that was about $1 billion. The wildfire in Jasper was about $1 billion. And the one that really, I think, astounds me the most is the event that happened in Calgary. It was one day, it was around 20-minute event that created almost $3 billion in insurable losses, and that was hail. And so we can see that these are having very big impacts on not just our communities, but on the homes and on the individuals that live in those homes. And what we are seeing too is that different regions have different combinations of climate hazards. So some regions may have, maybe at risk of flooding, but other regions may be at risk of multiple hazards. And so an example of that would be in Nova Scotia, where they were hit by hurricanes, atmospheric river type of rain events where they ended up with extreme flash flooding, and then also wildfires. And so I sort of asked this question a bit tongue in cheek, but nonetheless, to prompt us to begin to think about, as we build our homes to be more energy efficient and to have reduced carbon emission impacts on them. But we lose them to fire, or we lose them to extreme wind events or to flooding, and we have to build them again. How much carbon did we save, or how much energy did we save? And so we are in this a bit of a cycle, if you will, or a feedback loop where we've got causes that are creating extreme weather events that are then destroying homes that we have to rebuild, creating more of the cost. So we're in this sort of a feedback loop that we're trying to break. And so what we're suggesting is that the sustainable resilient approach through mitigation and adaptation strategies can help with that. Now, other things that are helping with that are policy. And so what we are seeing from a national perspective, a provincial, and even municipal perspectives, that there's attention being put on, we already know energy, right? With the tiered national building code. We also know about operational carbon and embodied carbon that's being looked at the national building code level and in other areas as well. But also now climate resilience is beginning to be paid attention at these across the board as well. So this is why we need to really start to pay attention. And so when we think about sustainable resilience and we think about the home of 2030, this is sort of what we've done just to give it a bit of reality for us to kind of think about. What are the things that we can do to not only reduce our energy impacts, but also reduce our carbon impacts from an operational and embodied carbon side, while simultaneously addressing extreme climate-related events? And so that is where we're going to hear from our builder leaders who participated in the case study project, which I'll explain in just a minute. But what we're trying to do is understand. We're in a very research phase of looking at this because this is very new, very iterative. How much does this cost when we start to integrate all of these things into a house? Are there challenges, barriers, or gaps to integrating these things? Are there co-benefits? For example, this one strategy can also do other things to address this energy, carbon, and climate resilience approach that we are moving toward. And so this is the type of thinking, this integrated thinking that we're starting to move towards. Now, as part of the Sustainable Resilient Homes program, I just wanted to show you some of the things that we're working on, but I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about the comprehensive tool, which you see in the upper left corner. So we've developed as a backbone to this program the comprehensive tool and workbook, because like I said, this is a very iterative process right now. We are learning new things. A lot of research is being done. And so we've designed this tool and workbook. We've got a light version of the tool. We've conducted case studies, which you're going to hear from 3 of the 25 builders that participated in the case studies. And we're currently developing 10 climate hazard workshops, each with a different climate hazard over the course of the summer. Now, just to talk about the comprehensive tool and its origin, we were approached by builders who identified that they were being asked by investors for climate risk information, and they tried to find the information and didn't know where to start because there was a gap. It was unclear. There's a lot of information, but it was unclear what was trustworthy, what they should do. And that's because we are in this early learning stage. And so what we've done is through input with the builders, and I'll show you who's on the list in just a minute, of people that are informing this work, we've developed a tool for builders and renovators, but others are very interested, like energy advisors, engineers, architects, building inspectors, are also interested in this, but it was designed for builders and renovators. It is a first of its kind, so it is novel. It is a one-stop shop. We're trying to put a lot in it, which is why we call it comprehensive, so that we can think about this integrated approach, right? It is designed for new and retrofit low-rise housing, and it was informed by multiple stakeholders. I'll show you a slide in just a minute, and it takes you through a stepped approach, and I'll explain that in just a minute. But the idea here is to not only give you a stepped approach of what is the climate hazard and what you can do about it, but also the workbook piece is being able to give you a space where you can begin to add information on the buildability and the affordability of these strategies as we begin to look at a more integrated approach. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I just wanted to show it to you. We have 6 different government groups that are part of it, NRCan, which is who I'm with, our climate scientists, our building code folks, housing and infrastructure, public safety, CMHC, those are some of them. 4 of Canada's large low-rise housing builders have been a part of this steering committee. And then, of course, key industry stakeholders like the Canadian Home Builders Association, the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction, and others. Now, the tool has 5 modules, and again, this is a comprehensive version. It has 5 modules. The first one helps to point you to what climate hazards you should be paying attention to, what the risks are, and then it moves into module 3 and 4, where we're looking at strategies, what you can do to help to adapt to those climate hazards. And then the last module, which I'll show in just a minute, is under construction, is what I'll call it. Because this tool, we're in version 1 of it with anticipation of evolving it for version 2. But the idea is to try to begin to think about, okay, how do we make decisions? What do we trade off? What do we move forward? So it's sort of a decision-making comparison matrix. So on module 1, as I mentioned, in here, this is where you identify your hazards. So in a first tab, before you get to module 1, you put in your location. And what we've done is we've built in from the National Building Code, the C2 table that has a roughly around 700 or so cities. So there's cities in every province and territory are listed. And the climate projections for, there's temperature, precipitation, there's a wind, there's a few a few strategies in there that are listed. We've built all of that information into the table, including the new future forecasted predicted tables. And that is one of the ways in which to help screen in what hazards may be relevant to your region. This is higher level, so it is a bit regional, not your particular address or lot, but it at least points you in the right direction of the type of hazards that you need to be aware of. It does provide some information. If you just see, I just did a screenshot of the page. It will provide some of the science information there, as well as where that information came from. Anything where you see that's like a light blue color in the tool is where you can, that's the workbook component, where you can make notes and select from drop-down lists and that sort of thing. The second module in the 5-module tool takes those climate hazards and applies them to the building systems that are in the tool. And you can see in that little chart there, it's everything from the envelope to mechanicals and electrical and that sort of thing. And it says what that climate hazard can do to the building. So what is the risk to the building and the land around the building based on that climate hazard? And so as you scroll down that tab, or that sheet in the Excel document, it goes through each of the climate hazards that are relevant for your region. Module 3 is where it begins to switch into what the strategies are that you can begin to address those climate hazards. And so it looks at land use. So module 3 is focused on land use resilience strategies. So you've got the home, and then you've got the land around the home. What are the things you can do around the home to help reduce impacts from that hazard to the home itself? In module 4, this is where it gets very comprehensive, where you have each of the 13 climate hazards that are listed in the tool. And you'll see that you've got good, better, best as the buttons. If you select best, you'll see automatically that filters below, you'll see a list of the strategies. And these are line by line strategies of you can take this particular action to help adapt to that particular climate hazard. And these are the strategies that the builders that are on the call today looked at for us and evaluated costs. They evaluated challenge, barriers, or gaps, where things may have co-benefits or maladaptations. And so we'll hear from them on the strategies. We did focus in on 5 hazards for the case study project: overheating, wildfire, wind, flooding, and hail. Those are the ones we focused for the case study project, but all of those details that they looked at and that they're going to be talking about today are built into this particular tab. And then, as I mentioned in module 5, this is a decision matrix. Now, it's extremely complex because there are a number of variables, and so we haven't mastered this, and this will be something that will be updated in the future, but at least we wanted to get it in the tool just to show what we're trying to achieve with that decision matrix. Now, just in preparation for the builders and what they're going to be talking about in just a minute, I just wanted to let you know what we've done on the case study project. So we've got 2 phases. Phase 1, we've finished, and we are in the process of developing some resources for that. But we met with 5 energy advisors in 5 regions across Canada. And each of those energy advisors have builders and renovators that we work with. And so we engage with about 5 builders and renovators per region. So in total, 25 builders and renovators, 3 of which are on the session today. And we looked at, like I mentioned, those 5 hazards, and they went through in detail the line items in the tool to evaluate those particular strategies. And at a very high level, some of the key things that we learned was, number one, there's a pretty big gap in knowledge and awareness across the board. From not just builders and renovators, but homeowners, trade suppliers, engineers, architects, and even in policy fields as well. And that's because we are in this very early learning, research, knowledge gathering stage. Industry readiness. So there are conflicts in different policies and codes, or material sourcing and availability. So there's some readiness challenges there. From an operational perspective, some of the things we heard about were concerns about resistance from trades, or even things like building schedule conflicts when you start to add new strategies or new processes into your construction practices. However, one of the things that was really fantastic to see was that a number of the builders identified, hey, I'm already doing this. And so I thought that was really fantastic to see. And others had identified that some of the things they didn't realize that they could be doing were actually very inexpensive and easy to implement into their standard construction practices. So they're voluntarily choosing to do that. But there are other things that were more difficult and expensive. And so some of the action items that the builders identified that they could benefit from are things like a labeling program or some sort of a program where homeowners could get insurance incentives or insurance breaks. Training and resource guides for the industry, of which we're working on. And also very detailed, like construction drawings, product lists, and other very practical things that the builders identified would be of value. Now, lastly, I'll just give a quick highlight of what's happening next, and then I'm going to hand it over to Gavin. So for the summer and fall, we are working on developing those 10 workshops. And then we are looking at publishing the 25 case studies in the fall. And following that, we are going to be starting 2 additional case studies in 2 new regions with 10 builders and renovators. And then for the future, we are looking at the next version of the comprehensive tool, where we're going to make some changes based on builder feedback, developing of workshop guidebooks, and additional case studies subject to funding. And that, if everybody wants to see that, you'll get the slides, but this is just my contact information, and I will stop talking there.
Stephanie, if I can, before Gavin, before you take over, if I can just
Yeah.
provide a few comments. Thanks for all that input. One point I wanted to make is that CHBA and the ICL we are working with the insurers together on those incentive programs, or on what they need in order to allow them to give incentives. We've already made a lot of progress. We're gonna probably provide that in one of the next webinars on this channel, so to speak, what that work has led to. Just wanted to mention that. Thanks for pointing that out. And on the other, I think very early on, I think you showed all those climate pictures. I just wanted to remind everyone, I guess, resilient home design and construction is aiming to make sure that we can keep those homes repairable and serviceable. The goal in some cases cannot be to come away unscathed. It's more like how resilient, how durable can we build them to be serviceable. I think that was a clarification I wanted to make. Anyway, with that, I think we're ready for Gavin.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to, okay, go ahead, Gavin. I'm going to hide my camera.
Thanks, Stephanie, and thank you, Frank, for the kind introduction earlier as well. I really appreciated being able to be a part of the case study, and Luke and Tommy from Capital Home Energy were the energy advisors that we've worked with quite a bit on several of our net zero builds, and they introduced us to the opportunity, and we found it extremely valuable. So thank you. And interestingly, so wildfire, we're a builder in Vancouver, and originally when Stephanie was talking about the 5 areas, wildfire did not jump out to me or to us as one that would be sort of as applicable, especially when you see the wildfires taking over as much as they have over the years. And this year, I think it's going to be the second worst wildfire sort of season, or could be potentially the worst. However, interestingly, through this process, I learned that living in a city and building in a city, to be able to build with resiliency, with fire in mind, is applicable, especially seeing what happened in the Palisades down in California. And fire can spread from building to building. So it's like a wildfire, but just not necessarily related to the forest. So I'm going to touch on some of our experience in building with resiliency in mind with respect to fire, but also touch on some items that I learned through the collaborative approach that this study did. We were in a position where we were able to have conference meetings with different builders, and I learned quite a bit. So happy to share what I can, and hopefully it helps out the learning process as we learn to adapt. So the 5 areas I'm going to touch on with respect to wildfire are cladding, site trees and landscaping, windows, exterior sprinkler systems, and indoor air quality. And cladding, the first one, is, I think, seemingly obvious, is the first line of defense against the extreme like flames and heat that wildfires can have. And this is a build that we currently have under construction in Vancouver. It's a net zero home, and its cladding is corrugated metal, and it has a metal roof, and it has non-combustible insulation on the exterior, and triple glazed windows. So this house, by its nature, would be a fairly resilient home, and you can see from the slide above, a big part about being resilient is not just the actual fire coming, but it's the embers that come and blow through the air. And there's actually a little story of in Vancouver, not too long ago, a wood frame, a 4-story wood frame townhome and apartment building that was under construction caught fire, and the whole thing went up in flames. And then embers from that fire spread through the wind into the neighboring houses. And a friend of mine's house, the ember actually went into their gutters, and there were leaves and everything in their gutters, and the leaves caught fire, and they had to extinguish that and it was a real touch and go situation whether their house was going to catch fire as well. Now, you don't plan for any fires like that to happen. But another case made for inner city non-combustible materials, such as the metal roof. This is a metal roof with integrated solar panels. Like we said, the metal cladding, hardy cement board, cement stucco. We build with a lot of stucco as well. So not many of our builds at all have wood or flammable siding and cladding at this point. Okay, so the next one is the site, trees, landscaping, decking, and this is a neat picture. I noticed it earlier in your slides as well, Stephanie, and I pulled it from firesmartbc.ca, which is, Luke introduced me to this resource. This is a credible resource about steps you can take to make your home and your property resilient for the impact of potential wildfires. And they really just break it down into zones. And the zone closest to the house is the one that we can control a lot, at least in Vancouver, and that relates to decking. You do not, like, we use composite decking for all our decks. We rarely build wooden decks. Keeping all around your house non-combustible vegetation or very limited vegetation. And then once you go out to the other zones, you're just becoming less and less chance for flames to spread, I guess you could say, right down to tree selection. Something we don't have as much flexibility in the city, but it's part of the process of determining your site for resiliency, or doing what you can. Windows are a pretty big one, and windows, there's some very advanced technology for actual fireproof windows, but it's very rare. It's where, like, the first line of defense window would melt, and then there's this layer of material that turns into a fire stop, essentially. We do not go to those lengths by any means, but all of our houses are either double or triple pane glass, which slows down the spread and the heat. The tempered glass, that holds off heat longer. Frames and frames construction. Aluminum metal obviously hold up a lot better than vinyl, which then holds up better than wood, obviously. And then, like I mentioned before, there are some advanced window construction options, but not something that would come into what we're building. Perhaps if you're in an extreme fire risk scenario and you need to have inflammable windows, that'd be the case. But something interesting, I think, on the next slide related to the windows is the use of exterior shutters. And we don't use this in the city, but through the LEEP program, one of the builders, Eric Lacey from Lacey Construction, he was explaining to us a couple of systems, and he's just out in the valley, so he's only about 100 kilometers outside of Vancouver to the east. And he has built a couple homes where these exterior shutters have been put in place. And the way they can operate, if you are in a wildfire situation, you essentially, and you have to evacuate your home, it's upon exit, you hit this button and down come the shutters. So that is really starting to build, like, okay, I want this home to be here when I come back, with that type of mindset. And although this is it's not an insignificant cost, it's also not, when you consider the value of your home, I would say it could be good value to live it if you were to spend it if you were in a high risk zone. And then exterior sprinkler systems, that's another one that Eric had installed. And it's actually a pretty low-tech solution. And I think some people use more sort of, they use their own system, which would actually just have a sprinkler on the roof. But with more advanced systems, you're making sure you get complete coverage. And even the type of spray, like, it can't be a mist spray because the wind will just blow it away. It has to have heavier water droplets. So you can take it up to a level where you have engineered systems, but the concept being that you're going to create this water curtain, if you will, over top of your house that could really make the difference of whether it's standing when the fire has left and you return to your home. Something not necessarily related to the actual resiliency of the house itself in a wildfire situation, but something in Vancouver that we notice Given the amount of wildfires in BC, we get a considerable amount of smoke and smoky haze in the city, depending on the fire's location and how the air is traveling and the wind and everything. But as a builder, as a net zero builder and a builder of new homes, we build airtight homes, and all of the airflow is controlled by your HRV, your heat recovery ventilator, or your ERV, which is essentially bringing all of the air from the outside, bringing it through a filter, and then circulating it with the home, and then exhausting the stale air. I'm sure everyone here is up to speed on HRVs. But what we're noticing after wildfire season, the HRV filters are black, like they're basically covered in what seems like a soot. So what we have to do, and what we recommend our homeowners do, is to actually definitely clean them every fall, but also every spring. You need to clean them more regularly. This isn't just an annual event. And the other thing as well with the filters is you can get some carbon charcoal filters that sort of react to smoke, and they're able to filter out some of the actual particles. So I thought that would be important to touch on. So just to do a quick summary of some resilient construction practices related to wildfire, we have the cladding, fiber cement, metal, non-combustible insulation, which actually is coming down in price. Before, there was only one real product on the market, but now we're noticing different manufacturers are coming up with their non-combustible insulation, which we're seeing is translating into more competitive pricing, which is nice. Metal screens for soffit or roof venting. I forgot to touch on that in the earlier slide, but anytime you have an entry of where it's a venting situation, air could come in. If you just put a wire metal mesh screen, the embers can't come in and get inside the house. They get stopped at that, and then they typically or mostly will go out. Fire resistant decking, the composite decking, and try to keep as much non-combustible materials and surfaces anywhere around your decks and porches. Fire resistant doors and window, double glazed, tempered, we touched on that. The roofing material, that's probably one of the easiest ways to be resilient building, whether it's a metal roof or fire resistant shingles. The vegetation setbacks we touched on, exterior sprinklers, and then the HRV filters.
Thank you, Gavin. Yes, so I don't know if Alex, were there any questions that came up for Gavin?
Thanks, Stefanie, and really great job, Gavin. Just amazing presentation. We're going to keep some things for the end, so nothing at this time. So the floor is yours, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, everyone, and thanks for allowing us to be a part of the case study and being and involved in this webinar as well. Avalon worked with 4 Elements as our energy advisor, and they do all of our net zero homes for us as well. During the case study, Avalon focused on hail, flood, and wind events. And lucky or unlucky for us, we build in the northeast of Calgary, so we had a really easy case study to allow us to do some comparisons to. For us, the project, as you can see, just above Calgary and just slightly left of Airdrie, is our Avalon Livingston project. And it took a direct hit during the storm. And, oh, no, can you just back up one slide? Sorry, thanks. And the day of the storm, I live roughly 14 kilometers north of the site, so I was able to get some really great pictures and also capture my neighbor in the middle of a tornado warning getting his solar panels installed. So safety was third that day, and people didn't necessarily recognize what was about to hit us. As the storm approached, our Livingston site took a direct hit from the storm. It lasted less than 20 minutes over our site. And as I took the opportunity to travel towards our project site, I captured some of the photos that are in this slide deck itself and the damage around us. This was again up in the northeast of Calgary. Significant damage to everything in the area that you could see possibly. And when we got to our project site, we were pleasantly surprised to see that the damage for our project site was very insignificant. On our projects, we use LP Smart siding and trim. We use a traditional 35-year shingle. And the only damage that we had to our buildings that were under construction was we had some Tyvek building wrap that was exposed, and the wind had torn it off of the building itself. So some of the pictures around our project, significant damage, as you can see from the slide deck. We're in the slightly center right of it, and everything around us had significant damage. And even today, some of those homes are still waiting to get repairs and waiting for their insurance. Our overall damage on the site was 10 shingles needed to be replaced between the buildings. We had no damage to our PV systems that were installed. And yeah, that pretty much covered for our site and the hail damage. So we build stacked towns. We use a DuPont envelope system. Exterior is covered with 1.5 XPS, rain screen, 1x4 strapping, and then our smart board. Our current roofing systems, as I touched on, we use a synthetic underlay, 35-year laminated shingle, and ice and water shield with that. And as we went through the case study and we're working our way through things, we were really pleased to see that we're already doing a lot of the things that were being asked of us from the case study. Confirmed to us that we're already an early adopter of many of the practices. Landscaping, continuous vertical path loads through roofing and the connections. It did identify gaps for us too. Simple to us, it was an easy decision process to make to go to a class 4 impact resistant shingle on our future projects that we have upcoming. So for us, it was just a simple update to our spec after we were looking through the things. Yeah, of course, there's the cost impact, but it's hundreds of dollars versus tens of thousands of dollars. And then when we're looking at replacement for condo boards and those sorts of things, it was an easy decision for us to move this way and make these changes for the gaps that we didn't have. Some of the stuff we obviously won't adopt just because we have to find that fine line for the homeowner, and we're building an affordable net zero home at no additional cost to our buyers. So where do these fit in? And these are the conversations that we have around the table as we're dealing with these resilient things that are coming out here right now. So yeah, thanks for allowing us to do a short presentation and being a part of this.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Yeah.
And last, we have Kevin. Is Kevin there? Frank, I think you're muted.
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering
Oh,
as well
there you
where
are.
Kevin went.
There, he's there. There he is.
There we go.
All right. Okay, I'll hide my camera again.
And you advance the slide. Perfect.
So welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Not sure if everyone heard that little bit of an intro, but it was a pleasure to work with NRCan and the LEEP team and CHBA for the case study project. So I'm with Farsight Homes. We are located in Whitchurch, Stouffville, just in the GTA of Ontario, and that's primarily where we build. So unlike some of the others that participated in the case study, being located in Ontario, we're kind of a little bit sheltered from the weather extremes like they get on the coastal areas or in the mountainous regions, where we don't face some of those really drastic storms, but we're not immune to our own severe weather events here. Particularly in the last decade, we've had some high wind events, a couple of minor tornadoes, which are becoming a little bit more common, and some flooding, given that we are close to the Great Lakes here, and we have a lot of tributaries that come off of those. So for us at Farsight Homes, we haven't really experienced too many of these severe weather events to us as a builder. So I took a little bit more of the approach of, don't be on the local news. Lessons don't have to be self-learned. We can learn from the others around us. We can learn from the industry as a whole, and we can be proactive, not reactive, and implement some of these measures that can really help our homes, our business, and the families that we build for. Ultimately, we're a small family builder, and we don't want any of our families moving into the homes to have to deal with something that we wouldn't want to deal with ourselves. So this is a photo from one of our recent subdivisions, and as the top says, notice anything out of the ordinary. Oftentimes, when we start looking ahead, forward thinking to resiliency, energy efficiency, carbon, any aspect, we start to get a little bit worried on cost and what that'll do for the business. Will we be able to sell homes? What will that look like? And when you look at this photo, that's a typical subdivision house, but you don't realize how many initiatives are actually built into that home that our families are going to move into. So for us, we focused on two measures for resiliency. One was wind. And in our typical subdivision house, we really focus on, how can we make sure that we're delivering resiliency in a way that doesn't impact our business too drastically on cost or process. And through the case study project, we started to see that we were actually quite ahead of others and that we were already doing many things that are fairly simplistic but made a huge difference. So big one is continuous vertical load path, overlapping your sheathing from your upper story down over your second story, your floor assemblies, incorporating hurricane clips on those roof trusses to make sure that in a severe event, your roof doesn't blow off. It's connected to your walls, which is connected right down to the foundation. And then higher wind rated shingles, ensuring that those shingles can withstand those higher wind events. But if something was to happen, having that full synthetic roof underlay gives you that plane of protection underneath to give the buyer or the homeowners time to have someone out to make those repairs and not worry about leakage. So then when it comes to flooding, here in Southern Ontario, we don't deal with flooding too often, but generally whenever you have a flooding event, you're also dealing with high wind, high rain. So there's always the possibility of water penetration. And that has to be a full system from top to bottom. And this is where you start to get a little bit of overlap between resiliency measures. So on the homes, we have always put a full synthetic roof underlay to make sure that that house is protected from any leaks, properly shingle lapped, right? It's in the little details. It only works if it's properly shingle lapped and you have that drainage plane. Full house wraps works for energy efficiency and air tightness, but again, it gives you that WRB so that in the event that moisture or water gets through, you have a drainage plane. And this is where kind of the 4 Ds of water come into play: deflect, drain, dry, and durability. Your cladding, your roof shingles is kind of your deflection, your overhangs. And when something does occur, you want to be able to drain that water away. So having that full plane of protection, top to bottom, is very vital. We've also made the decision to go to flange windows. It helps with installation, ensuring that we can get a nice airtight, watertight seal. And that's where the flashing tape comes in. And then other little measures like tip sills, windows, as the saying goes, that many have probably heard before. It's not if they leak, it's when they leak. That when they do eventually leak, that you have a method to drain that water away, that your wall will not get wet, and in the event that something should happen, it can dry. And then particularly when it comes to actual site developments, ensuring that your grading is sloped away from your homes, that the basement windows, if you have any, are as high as possible outside of grade or window wells to help promote that, they have a little bit of a safety measure should there be any ponding or pooling. So through the case study project, we really found there was several items that we were knowingly or even unknowingly already achieving. Perfect example is the shingles we use are already at a class F, 120 kilometer per hour or mile per hour wind rating. And obviously, you can't implement everything, but sometimes resiliency measures can often be overlooked, but they also have additional benefits. They can also help with energy efficiency or even carbon reduction. There's a lot of low-cost items, hurricane clips. They're not an expensive item. They take a little bit of time to install, but they can really make a difference in the event of a severe storm. And lastly, the biggest one that we really found was how important collaboration is. There's a lot of time and effort that goes into building these homes, but equal amount of time and effort needs to be on the lead end, working with consultants, trades, your manufacturers and suppliers to come up with a holistic approach to building a home and ensuring that those details are in the drawings, scope of work, and that everyone is on the same page when it comes to the objectives to be achieved. So through the case study project, we have now made some determinations for what we are looking to do on our next project to make one step further down the road to resiliency. Our next project will feature some attached homes, more dense product, and we've identified that there's several things we can do to really enhance the resiliency of our homes. So the first one is we're looking to do a slab on grade construction. Not only does that reduce and almost eliminate the risk of flooding because you don't have a basement, it also has a huge embodied carbon reduction. Second aspect to that is we're going to go to a no cladding or a no masonry cladding, all a soft siding. This allows us to have a larger amount of exterior insulation for energy efficiency on a standard 8-inch foundation, but also saves us some cost that we can now go to a higher rated impact resistant siding. So that simple measure, again, you're looking at resiliency, it has energy efficiency, and it has both embodied and operational carbon reduction. And then all our homes will have backflow preventers on the main sanitary lines. Again, simple, cost-effective measure that in the event of a severe weather event, your homeowners are protected from any kind of basement or backup into their homes because you have that device installed. So there's a lot of very easy, simplistic things that we can do, and simple process changes that we can really make sure that our homes are resilient and ensure our families are happy. So this last slide just kind of shows that's the corporate office that we just built. We built it ourselves through the COVID pandemic, and we put a lot of those resiliency measures into our own build just because we want to ensure that if we're promoting all this stuff, we're selling it, that we also have it at our own office. So that's a metal roof, full underlay under the roof, impact resistant siding, backflow preventers, you name it, we basically have it installed there. So it becomes a great case study in itself for our homeowners. And we're in the process now of hopefully labeling this as a full net zero build once we get some PV put on the roof.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, wow. I'm impressed. For everyone else, this first time that each of the speakers saw each other's presentation in full. I guess I'm very impressed with all the details we learned and your journeys. That's really good. As Alex is grabbing back the screen, we're bookending this sort of with our slides here. I will let you know that we'll go to a panel discussion now, and then we'll move to questions and answers from the audience. And before we even start the panel discussion, we wanted to run that other poll again, or at least the incremental one, essentially asking for builders and renovators that answered earlier. Now that you've heard what Stefanie and the earlier adopter builders shared, how likely are you to implement resilience into your next project? So are you less likely to do something same as before, somewhat more likely? So it's just a scale to see, was there anything that has encouraged you to, oh, you know what, we can do that too. Actually, personally, I think the slides that we saw from Gavin, Kevin, and Mark really helped me to understand how simple some of these things are. Simple in quotation marks. I know there's a lot more. I don't want to diminish anything that the builders have done. Okay, so if we have the results, okay, there you go. Single majority for more likely and very likely. That's a great result. And I think that goes thanks to the 4 presenters. Thank you so much for that. So with that, what we wanted to do is a quick rapid fire round of questions and answers. So what I'll do is I'll ask the first question there, and then all Gavin, Mark, and Kevin, we go from west to east, give us their answers, and then we'll move to the next question. So the first one was your key takeaway from the case study project? Gavin, if you want to start.
Okay. Yeah, I think my key takeaway was that, especially it was very interesting to, have exposure and to talk to many different builders, is that all of us are already sort of building in with resilience in mind, or in some resilient ways. But with a focused approach, it becomes much more applicable. And you can, when you actually focus on it, and you focus on what the cost is, you can really start to make some decisions based on resiliency. So that was a big takeaway for me. And then also another big takeaway, just being the national nature of it, was that we have such a large landmass of a country that building for resiliency really is different in different areas. It's different if it's inner city, it's different if it's rural or interior, and then just based on the actual climate of a specific part of Canada, completely a different set of applications that can be applied. So unique in that way too.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, same with just continuing on with what Gavin said. Yeah, exactly that. We're already building resiliency into what we're doing, better than code for our projects, and we treat different regions of the greater Calgary area for us differently. We factor in those more resilient products in where we're building in the Hill Belt. It might be a little bit different in the southeast of Calgary, but we're still taking the lessons learned and trying to apply them across the board within the restrictions that we get from the city and other areas that we build.
Thanks. And Kevin?
For us, it was really just how many items that we were already doing, knowingly or unknowingly. It was kind of a shock to us, and that's a bit of a missed opportunity for our own site team to understand what we're building, how we're building, but also from a marketing standpoint, being able to promote what we're building. There's a lot of things that you can do, and often they're very simple. It can be a simple process change, or even just additional, quality control inspections. But a lot of things that go into the home were already being missed on being resiliency measures.
Right. And some of that goes to the next question. What were some things that surprised you from being involved in doing this on your side? We'll start with Gavin again.
I think it was surprising. A neat part about the program, or the case study, was that we were asked to really really dive deep into a lot of details that were presented to us for resiliency and understand a cost perspective for them. And some were quite easy, like metal roof versus asphalt shingles. But then there were a lot of different areas that I don't think cost much, but it was really hard. It was a surprising thing to have to think, okay, if we tighten the nail pattern on our sheathing, let's say, or on our roof or shingles, it's a little trickier, you know, and you're dealing with your trades and you're dealing with suppliers. So that whole cost exercise was surprisingly a bit trickier than I thought it would be.
Interesting. Mark?
Just the number of codes that were referenced and trying to get access to those, and then taking those codes once we got them and trying to interpret that to our trade partners and getting them to understand the details that's required.
Right. Kevin?
So that was one of them, just the difficulty in accessing some of these codes and standards, and especially coming to find out that you have to pay for a lot of those. So it makes it a little bit counterproductive to try to understand how you can build better or what to do better. And then, as I kind of alluded to before, just how many items that could be implemented through just a simple process change or additional quality control measures where, yeah, that's very low-hanging fruit that can be implemented at relatively little to no cost, but can make a big difference.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, the price of standards has shown up in other areas too. Okay, let's move to the last question. Moving forward, what, if anything, would you do differently, having learned from this? Gavin, we'll start with you again.
I think I'm sort of like building on sort of Kevin and Mark's points just about being more aware of resiliency. It really opened our eyes up, and I was able to share with our team members. We're already doing a lot of these things, and in Vancouver, you're doing a lot of them because of code. And Vancouver, you know, creates its own codes that sort of employ some of these things. But the real reasons to do it and the awareness of it was something moving forward that we're going to have more awareness than we would have before, for sure, related to resiliency. Yeah.
For us, closer work with our architects to better refine our specs and call out details in our drawings, and work with our trades so they have a better understanding of what's being expected of them when we're building in this space.
Right, starting early, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Kevin?
Right at the quote request, right through to kickoff of the work activities.
Yeah. Kevin?
Just really working collaboratively, right from inception of the project with the engineers, architects, your township, conservation authorities, having those roundtable discussions to understand what the objectives are, to make sure that you really value engineer the community, the homes, and deliver the best product possible. Those conversations have to start from the get-go. Otherwise, you're chasing details after the fact, which becomes time-consuming and costly.
Right. Thank you. Great insights for this. We do have a question for Stefanie as well. Have there been or will there be any updates based on the builder feedback throughout the project? I think that was part of the reason why you did the case study. Can you tell us something about what the updates will be and to the tool?
Certainly. So based on the feedback, number one, it was absolutely a pleasure to work with the folks on the call here through the case study project and the other 22 builders and renovators. Everyone just really rose to the occasion, and it was a fantastic experience. And absolutely. So as I mentioned, this is an iterative process. We are learning, and this is evolving. And so for the version 1 of the tool, which is the current status of the tool, that was very much informed by the builders that were part of that steering committee. And now that we are rolling out with the case studies, exactly. So getting the feedback from the builders and some of the things that not only the builders that were part of the case study, but also if other people have feedback, and I have enlisted feedback from other people as well. But some of the things that we are looking at for the next version of the tool is looking at the way in which we have the climate hazards broken down. So right now we have 4 climate hazards that are related to flooding. We've got kind of the stormwater type of flooding, and then we've got coastal lake and river flooding. So we might do some reconfiguring there to consolidate those a little bit better. And right now we have hail sort of integrated into one of the extreme storms, and we'll probably extract that out. So that we'll have that a bit better aligned now that we're kind of have gone through this sort of process. So that's one of the things that we're going to do. Another thing that we're working on right now is we built into the tool place savers, if you will, for manually inputting the energy and the embodied carbon impacts or even operational impacts of carbon for each of those line items in modules 3 and 4. So now my colleague Patrick and I, he runs the MCE squared, the embodied carbon calculator. We are looking at how can we get the environmental product declarations for the line items that are in the climate hazards and begin to merge that all together so that we can auto-populate that information instead of people having to manually input it. The last thing that I'll mention, because there's a few others, but the last thing that I'll mention is what some of the builders were talking about today with regards to the strategy. So some of the strategies in there are drawn from CSA standards, and so they define things like kilonewtons of withdrawal and some complexities that say the trades and the builders don't know exactly what that translates into. For example, how long of a nail, what type of a nail, what pattern, that's some of those technical details. And so as folks do research on that, like our researchers at National Research Council develop additional information on that, we are going to refine and update those line items in the strategies lists in module 3 and 4 as they become available.
Yeah, thank you. And can I ask you a follow-up? You did mention earlier, like this was the complex tool, it's a design tool, and we heard you have to dig deep into the detail. You mentioned a light tool, I imagine that as a simpler tool, and I kind of know what I'm asking for because I've been part of the work, and I'm really excited about that. Because for those people who don't necessarily want to spend all the time figuring it out, and having an easier way, maybe with some assumptions to just tell me what the first top 3, top 5 things are. Can you say something about that light tool to us?
Yes, certainly. And thank you for asking that. Yes. So what we did was, because the comprehensive tool is exactly that, it's comprehensive. There's a lot of cells and a lot of line items in there. We wanted to create a simpler interface. And so basically what it does, how I walked you through the 5 modules, essentially what it does is you put in your location, it screens in your climate hazards, and then it goes straight to what are the solutions or what are the strategies that you can select from to implement for your project. So it takes out all the workbook components, and it goes from essentially climate hazard problem to here are the solutions. One of the things that I'm going to mention, and again, it is founded on all the information in the light tool comes from the comprehensive tool. And so as we update the comprehensive tool, the light tool will be refined. What I would like to get to is in future work is, the 10 climate hazard workshops that I mentioned, having complementary guidebooks that have all of the information from the workshop that's also in the tool, so that light tool can automatically give you the guide for that particular climate hazard with all of the checklists built into it.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And with that, I think we're ready to move to the questions from the audience, and Alex will tell us what the audience has asked.
Yeah, a lot of great questions coming in. So we'll start with this one. Many extreme weather events cause power outages. A few months ago in Ontario, an ice storm caused extensive and lengthy outages. Are you looking at options for backup power, such as battery backups, generators, and systems for reducing electric load when on backup power, such as hybrid heating systems that switch to natural gas heating during power outages, which tend to have lower electricity requirements than electric heat pumps? So maybe we could start east to west. Kevin, do you have any insight on that?
A little bit. So I was directly affected by that ice storm. I was without power for several days, wondering how am I going to get through this? And in fact, I was down in my basement, bailing out my sump pump by hand because it was about to start overflowing. So I know firsthand what that is like. And so for our homes, we've done a multitude of things. We are doing a hybrid heating system. That's an electric air source heat pump, but naturally, use natural gas from the domestic hot water tank through a hydronic furnace as a backup heat source. We're very much on the, we will not go all electric. We'd like the dual fuel systems or having some sort of backup heat, but not just one utility. But then other things such as we're going to start putting into our homes a device called a GeneraLink, which is a module that goes onto the hydrometer on the side of the house. And basically, as long as the homeowner has a generator, they can direct connect to this device and power their home. They can't power everything, but they can power all their essential loads so that they don't have to worry about bailing out a sump pump by hand or being cold because they don't have heat. It's just a matter of getting a small generator and plugging it in. It's plug and play. So things like that can be simple solutions to try to mitigate those effects when those storms do occur.
That's great. Do any of the other builders or Stefanie or Frank have any comments on that?
Yeah, I could make a comment on that just from our experience out here in Vancouver. And we built quite a few net zero homes that are all electric. We are noticing a rapid advancement. We deal with BC Hydro very closely and the City of Vancouver very closely on right sizing panels, which is going to become more and more common. And the use of smart panel technology to basically manage loads and in conjunction with a battery, like I think the curve is steepening on how fast these technologies are developing from what we see. So I think we are very near a point where homes will have their own backup battery system in the event that power goes out. And we're sort of trying to be an early adopter in that space.
And maybe I'll take
your electric car will end up serving as a battery as well. You come home and you'll be able to actually connect your car to the home and use that electricity during the peak times and then put it all back during non-peak times. So I think we're entering into a pretty exciting space with respect to electrification.
And I'll take that as a cue because you used the early adopter word. So we probably will have a webinar on that. CHBA is working with various partners and on the electrical code. There's exciting updates. We recently had a joint meeting of the Net Zero Council and the Technical Research Committee, actually talking a whole afternoon just about electrification and all these technologies. So it's coming. It'll probably be one of the next webinars. And maybe Stefanie, last comment, like, is it part of your list as well eventually, or?
It is as a line item in the list. Yes.
Perfect.
I thought that was a smooth segue from Frank, and we'll move on to our next question. I'm curious what motivated the implementation of these climate resiliency measures. Was it driven by proactive builders and renovators, or were they initiated in response to clients' requests?
I could just quickly say the tool was inspired by builders who were being asked by investors for climate risk information, and they didn't know where to go. So that was for the development of the tool, but I'll leave it to the builders for the other response.
And maybe before the builders answer, from the point of view, whether it's your clients or you, which is a very interesting question, actually. One that also drives a discussion between we have a Resilient Homes Task Force between CHBA and the Institute for Catastrophic Loss Reduction, meaning where builders and insurers work together. And the insurers obviously are driving, where the building is being damaged, it's the property insurance, property loss insurance, driving the interest in buildings that they stay serviceable, right? But we often ask that question, how can we convince homeowners, and this may be going to marketing questions, like how can we bring the value of building a better product to homeowners where, obviously you need to compete on the market where you can't make your home so unaffordable that you cannot compete. So the marketing, competition, costing, all comes into question. Now, if your homeowner asks, that's of course easier. And that's why the insurers are asking us, like, how can we tell the homeowners? So we have these discussions, but we haven't heard the answer. So very interesting question. I'd be interested to hear what the builders have to say, whether it's homeowners asking or the builders exploring.
So I'll jump in first on that. It's very much a decision that we have made. Being a small family builder, as I kind of alluded to in the presentation, we never want to be on the news because something happened to one of our homes or our sites. We'd like to sleep at night and not have to worry. And especially, being a little bit more proactive for some of the simple measures helps on the after sales service side or the questions that happen afterwards. But we've also found a large availability, as you kind of alluded to, Frank, on marketing, that buyers are becoming smarter and more educated, and they're not necessarily worried about a couple of dollars and cents, but they're worried about, is this a resilient home, a comfortable home, a healthier home? And when they're looking at making that large investment, they're really looking at how that's going to impact their family day to day, and not so much the dollars and cents. So being proactive and implementing some of these things gives us a marketing angle where we can promote ourselves as being, a leader in the industry.
Mark, do you have anything to add, or should I?
Nope, go ahead and I'll jump in after.
Okay. I think it's interesting from our perspective. It's almost like a great number of our homeowners and developer clients, they're looking to build with durability in mind and also low maintenance. But what you get with that is a pretty resilient structure as well. So it sort of has become a bit of a byproduct. But on the West Coast, we do get some very, very extreme weather events. So the resiliency part is almost like it's a need, and we do have a lot of sump pump situations. We have crazy atmospheric rivers where the amount of flow going in there, like we have to prepare for these events. And so it's just sort of a way of building.
Right. And same with us, echoing what both Kevin and Gavin have said. The homeowners are becoming more savvy. They're smarter. They're starting to ask for this. From a sales side, we're going down that road of sharing that information with them, but it's more of a focus on, you get the resiliency, but you have a better built home, and you've got all of the things that go into that better built home. Less of a focus on that resiliency, but we're also trying to put together that education for the homeowners, that when they come in the door and they do start asking those questions, our sales team and our folks have that education and that being able to say, yeah, you get this and this is what it looks like and means. So
Yeah, thank you. We are at time. Alex, do we have one or two
We
more
have some really good questions coming up, so I guess you could finish that thought.
So what we could do is we could stay on for a little longer. If people have to leave now, please feel free to do so. If you have to leave, we thank you for coming and listening. And keep in mind that you will have access to the recording in a day or so, including the rest of the questions that you're going to miss if you have to jump off now. We hope the format and content of today's webinars have helped everyone in understanding and how to integrate resilience into their projects. And if you have any feedback or follow-up, Alex, if you just advance to the next slide, and then we'll jump back to this one. Any feedback or follow-up, please contact Stefanie, Alex, or myself, and our emails are on that screen. And all that is really left for me to remind those that have to jump off now that we will post the slide deck and the recording. And once the next webinar will come up for promotion, you'll see it in social media and on our Housing Tech News. Don't forget to sign up for the next one. And with that, whoever has to go, thank you again, and we can go back to maybe doing one or two more questions.
Yeah, and we're going to address the elephant in the room, the cost. I know Kevin kind of touched on this earlier, but I'm going to merge two questions. What is the typical percentage increase in cost to build more resilient? And the next one, and two-parter, how much of overall cost did you absorb to reduce cost to owners? Maybe we'll go west to east. Gavin?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I think I said in one of my previous comments that was a surprising thing. It's hard to measure the cost. Yeah, it's tricky because it is case by case and build by build based. Like the example of the metal roof, for example, which we're doing more and more metal roofs. That can, depending on the design of the roof, that can be 40 to 50% more cost than a conventional, lifetime warranty shingle roof. So there's certain aspects, but then when you look at, say, the cladding, we do the metal cladding, that corrugated metal cladding, which has an interesting aesthetic. It's got this modern design aesthetic, but it's actually one of the most economical ways to clad the house. So I don't know if I could say a percentage without breaking down the design and how we're going to apply it. With anything that we're doing that's newer, we're absorbing some costs because there is a learning curve and there's time spent away from site when you're trying to figure it out, that you're not billing to the project or to the client. And then you're honoring certain costs related to a budget that you're not going to exceed for a client or a homeowner as well. So we do absorb some as we learn, but we're sort of doing it for the bigger picture in mind and knowing that it's going in this direction. That's always been our approach. We know it's going here. Let's start as soon as possible to so that we're ready when it is going to be something that's mandated. So it didn't directly answer the question, but hopefully gave you a bit of insight.
I think it's great.
Anyone else want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, we're in the same boat. We're absorbing some of that cost. We've just made a business decision, and putting a class 4 shingle roof, it's $1,000 extra or a few $1,000s extra over the lifespan of it. So.
And I'm wondering, it's maybe even almost a bit of an unfair question to early adopters, right? But I mean, that's what you guys do. You do figure things out for the rest of us so that when the mainstream starts using it, we have a cost-effective measure. And maybe a word on what the CHBA staff is doing a lot. We take what we learn from you and we bring that to codes and standards committees to tell them, hey, this is more effective than others. Can we, if the codes or standards or guides write something, could we focus on the more cost-effective stuff? That's what we're learning from you. So to asking you for cost effectiveness is almost a bit.
And I think, yeah, Frank, I think I could add to that, just in the neat part about the case study was that we were asked to dive into costs of our case projects. And I believe Stefanie and your team and the tool that you're building, it's almost like you can choose all the different aspects and it's actually going to be able to tell you what the costs are. Yeah. Am I correct in that direction?
So the intent is with the costing information, because it's going to be different for each province and territory and location, but to give people the general idea. So they're averaged and they're built in, so you can get a sense, is this a low cost investment, generally speaking, or is this going to be a higher cost investment? Kind of to your point, like about the steel versus standard roof shingles, you can get a sense of that through the approach that we're going to take. It's already, some of it's built into the tool. We just didn't have a lot of the data. And so now we're just going to keep updating that. Yeah. But it won't give you exactly what the cost is for people. Yeah.
Kevin, last word, or do we skip for one more rapid fire question, Alex?
It's up to the folks. Go ahead, Kevin. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I would echo everything that was already said, just because it's very hard based on geographical location, what strategies you're looking to implement. Some things can be taken care of, in the design process before actually building, right through, what's the potential cost savings for not having to deal with some, after sales service headaches or warranty issues. How do you quantify that? So it really is a holistic approach, right from design through after sales service. So it becomes very difficult to put a percentage on what it actually affects the house by.
Okay, one more, and then if everyone promises rapid fire response, and then we'll close it down after that.
Yeah, there are a lot of great questions. So we'll certainly try to, from CHBA's standpoint, to reach out to everyone after the webinar and answer these accordingly. But so this is to the builders. Did you have the opportunity to engage manufacturers in cases where you had to overcome hurdles with building officials, code requirements, and environmental agencies? So just looking at red tape. Maybe we'll start with Mark this time.
The only thing we had to do was reach out to suppliers and engage them. And this is where we're going. Can you work with us, supply us the material? And yeah, that's pretty much it for us.
That was good. Maybe we'll go to Gavin next if you have any words.
Yeah, we've had nothing but good experiences with the building officials and our inspectors. And when we use a new product, there might be a new product that doesn't even have the required backup or paperwork, if you will, and they're open to us working directly with suppliers and manufacturers if it is something that would be suitable.
Wow, that's refreshing. Kevin, do you have any comments on that?
Most of the same. We reached out to many of our manufacturers and suppliers for some details, and found they're, for the most part, very happy to assist. But a lot of times we found that they also had some of the same questions that we did of, what does that kilonewton withdrawal resistance means for that fastener? So then they were starting to try to source the code reference or compliance, just like we were. So in general, most are very open, but to the township or conservation authority, there are so many processes that go into housing. So it becomes challenging to ensure that everyone is on the same page.
Yeah, thank you. And on that note, I wanted to comment earlier, and I'm going to use that as part of my closing, because one thing that Stefanie mentioned earlier in your presentation is how many government organizations and how many partners were involved in this project to set up the tool. That is really fantastic, because one thing that we have often observed in standards and codes is that a lot of government agencies and provincial and federal government and municipal are not aligned. Everyone's doing their own little thing. And this project had so many different groups with slightly different mandates pulling in the same direction. And Stefanie, I think I would like to thank you to do that in that project. That was really a positive experience for us. And with that, I also would like to thank the early adopters. This was the launch of our new series. It has completely convinced me that this is something we're going to continue. So you guys were perfect for our launch of the webinar series. Thank you so much, bringing all this information to us. Yes, and with that, I've already said the things at 2 o'clock. It's going to be recorded. Everyone can watch it, and it'll be up maybe in a day or so. And we will promote our next webinar on the same channels where you found this one. So thank you, everyone. And I hope everyone's going to have a happy afternoon.
Thank
See
you.
you next.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.